Welcome in to NFL Daily. I am Will Scott. A lot to talk about on today's show. Of course, we heard the news this morning that Trey Lance could be on the move. We'll discuss some of the top trade destinations for the 49ers quarterback. But first, shout out your favorite NFL team down in the comments section. Mr. Awesome Guy 222, I see you, man. Appreciate you tuning in. Robert's a Falcons fan. Spoiler alert, Robert, we do mention the Falcons as a possible Trey Lance destination, but did they get into my top 5? You'll have to stick around to find out. One, I can promise you we're going to talk about Trey Lance to the Raiders. That's another spoiler there. MJ is not a Trey Lance believer, as saying he's a water boy backup quarterback. He's unproven. There's no question about it, but the potential is there. He was the number 3 overall pick for a reason. Clayton, Dallas Cowboys fan. What's up, Clayton? Thanks for tuning in. Madden Field, also a Cowboys fan. Guess who's in the chat, producer Sam Brown? Who? Chad Jones is in the chat, watching from Vonetta, Virginia. Candy Kane as well is here, watching from West Virginia. Good to see y'all. Supporting multiple chat sports channels here. We appreciate Chad Jones and Candy Kane. Vince is a Cowboys fan. MJ is a Saints fan. Chris saying, the Bears. They're going to have a good year. I think the Bears are going to have a decent year, Sam Brown. Maybe 8-9 wins. We'll see. Cameron, all about the Bills. Amar, 561, Colts gang. What are y'all going to do at quarterback, man? I don't know. I'll say this. If the Texans make the mistake of not taking a quarterback at 2, Colts fans will be laughing at their division rival because C.J. Stroud might fall to the Colts at 4. Harrison Sanchez saying, go Chargers, go. Matt Lewis saying, Lions coming for you all. Man, the Lions are going to be legit this year. I haven't seen them linked to Trey Lance, but will Trey Lance get traded? Y for yes, in for no, down in the comment section. Go down in the live chat and let me know. I do believe Trey Lance is going to get traded. Sam, what do you think? As we're joined by producer Sam Brown.
I feel like it's been a long time coming that these rumors would come about. I think from the moment Brock Purdy kind of took over and 49ers fans realized that they had an ability to win now with him, it kind of put that message out in the air of, hey, Trey Lance might not have this future in San Francisco.
Right.
That they envisioned whenever they drafted him number 3 overall.
And they gave up, if you remember, Sam, they gave up a haul to move up and make that trade with the Dolphins. And for it to have not worked out is just crazy.
And it's not by his fault by any means.
No, absolutely.
You start behind Jimmy G one year, he gets his shot and unfortunately suffers that season-ending injury, but at the same time, that's the business of the NFL.
I feel like if you're a team like the Titans or the Colts and you need a quarterback and you're not convinced that your guy is going to fall to you, let's say they're not sold on Anthony Richardson or they're not sold on Will Levis or Hooker or anybody else, a Trey Lance trade might make a lot of sense for a team like the Titans.
Yeah, and especially a team that still believes in that potential because, like you said, it is very untapped. It's been untapped basically since he's been into the league. So I don't know that he's really fully had that chance. I mean, he had it to an extent with the Niners, but then that injury came in to just fully take the reins of an offense and for a team to see what he can really do over the course of a full season.
Yeah, I think the uncertainty with Trey Lance certainly might make a team hesitant about making a trade. But you could also say the same about any quarterback in this NFL draft. You know, they're unproven as well at the NFL level, so we'll certainly see what happens. MJ saying, yes, he is going to get traded. We have Dolo Dynamite saying the Lions trade for Trey Lance. I know that we've talked about Lamar Jackson and the Lions. I don't think Trey Lance makes sense because I'd say Jared Goff right now is probably better than Trey Lance. Jay Peach says, embarrassing for the 49ers that it's gotten to this point. I mean, look, the 49ers right now, I think, feel really good about Brock Purdy. It's quite shocking that the last pick of the draft is going to start over the number 3 overall pick, but they got their guy in the end. Robert, I agree with you. Robert's saying Trey Lance to the Texans. MJ is saying the same thing. And we've heard a lot about, the Texans are not sold on any quarterback in this draft outside of Bryce Young. And I know I just said a moment ago that if you're in the same boat as Houston, you're not really sold on any quarterbacks, then maybe a Trey Lance trade would make sense. Speaking of quarterbacks, who's the best quarterback in the NFL right now? I think it's hard not to say Patrick Mahomes, but, Joe Burrow's in that conversation. Justin Herbert's really good. Aaron Rodgers, maybe he's going to go back to being MVP Rodgers if he gets traded to the Jets. Chad Jones is saying Tua. Maybe next year, if Tua can stay healthy, he can be a top-tier quarterback.
He can be in the conversation.
He's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay healthy.
The health is as big of a question with him as it is for any quarterback in recent NFL memory.
And the Dolphins have failed to address the offensive line, which is crazy.
Don't you know all about that?
I did rant about it for a few minutes this morning.
I think any questions about who the best quarterback in the NFL were answered in the postseason when Patrick Mahomes played the way he did. And it's not like he had that Tyreek Hill. Obviously, Travis Kelce, I'm not saying that, but me and Harrison talked about it on Chiefs Live earlier this week, and it's just funny how people viewed this receiving core as a whole going into the season.
Right.
And then he put up the best numbers he has in his career with that core, without that Tyreek Hill player.
There was a question that is Patrick Mahomes going to be Patrick Mahomes without Tyreek Hill? And I think he answered that question.
He is Patrick Mahomes still. He's
and
still a monster.
The Chiefs could make a trade for DeAndre Hopkins. We've seen them linked to Zay Flowers. That could be a better offense next year.
And again, they go back then to being downright terrifying to playing against.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think this question might have been answered during the AFC Championship game because I feel like if Joe Burrow would have beaten Patrick Mahomes again, a lot of people in the chat would be typing Joe Burrow. But most people are typing Patrick Mahomes, including Shamari Peoples. We have MJ saying Mahomes, then Joe Burrow. I would agree with that. Mahomes right now is number one. Joe Burrow's two. If Joe Burrow wins a ring, though, this next year, that could change. That could change. Candy Cane, shout out Abby with the Bengals channel, doing a great job. True that. Abby Alonso, the new host of Bengals Breakdown, also hosts our Tennessee Titans channel here at Chat Sports. Chad Jones, we're going to talk about Tua's interview or his press conference a little bit later on today's show, so stay tuned for that. If you have a question on today's show, Chad, I'm assuming you do, use hashtag NFL or Super Chat to skip the line. Got one mailbag coming up later on the show, so if you want to get on it, hashtag NFL or Super Chat. Super Chatting, the best way to get on the show because it guarantees you a spot on the show. We're going to have a lot of people watching, a lot of questions that we're going to be asked. To guarantee your spot, you can Super Chat.
I always like to guarantee to people, if we're not in a cut, if we're not in a cut, if we're in a mailbag, if we're outside of it, as long as Will stops talking when I tell him to stop talking, I will get
no promises.
I know. That's the big if. If Will stops talking when I tell him to stop talking, I guarantee I will get your Super Chat on screen in 60 seconds.
All right, 60 seconds. All right, that's the Sam Brown guarantee. I'd love to see it. Hopefully I stop talking, Sam. Name a sleeper first-round prospect in the 2023 NFL Draft.
To be fair, it's not you. It's everybody.
Well, especially me sometimes.
I have to tell Tom to stop talking all the time.
Yeah, but I do tend to talk a lot even off air. I'll say that much. MJ saying Jaylen Brown's or Josh Allen third best QB. Man, well, Hurts got paid like a top 3 QB. But right now I'd have to say Josh Allen. But all the respect to Jalen Hurts. He definitely deserves that contract. GM Evan Henders just read my mind, Sam, because he said Jack Campbell here for sleeper first-round prospect.
That's the one Will's been talking about the entire time.
Yeah, I like Jack Campbell a lot. I feel like he might be a guy that, kind of slips into the first round, sneaks into the first round. Everyone's going to say, oh, they reached. And then he's going to become like a Hall of Fame player. That's the expectation for me, at least, for Jack Campbell. That's his ceiling for me. I think he can be an all-timer. I really, really like him as a prospect. Christopher Flores saying Bijan Robinson. Well, he's going to be a first-round pick. The question is, where's he going to go? I've seen mock drafts that have him going as high as number 8 to Atlanta. I've also seen mock drafts that have him going to the Cowboys late in the first round. So we just don't know where Bijan's going to go in the first round. But I don't see him falling past 13 or 14 at this point. Cameron, thanks for the question. Might get to that on the mailbag. Kylie Lama saying Joey Porter Jr. Oh, $20 super chat. From who? From who, Sam? Who?
Chad Jones.
Who? Chad Jones. Can I sing the Dolphins song? We're not on Dolphins today.
I'll allow it.
And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl because we're the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins #1. Shout out Chad Jones. Supporting Chat Sports. Supporting Dolphins today. We appreciate Chad Jones. Look, I mean, Miami has a Super Bowl caliber roster, but at what I said on the show earlier today, Chad, and I think you watched that video, is they still have holes on this team, the biggest one being at right tackle. And if Tua does not stay healthy, this Dolphins team is not going anywhere. So they have got to address the right tackle position. They go with Austin Jackson. Hopefully that works out. But you got to have more depth at that position. You really do. If you're ready to start today's live show, let's get to 60 likes. Hit the thumbs up icon if you are ready to start today's show. Right now, we have over 100 people watching, but just 26 likes. Let's double the amount of likes before today's show. Like the video if you want to get started with today's show. A lot to discuss. I mean, we all woke up this morning, I think, to the Trey Lance news about him potentially being on the move. That's going to be a big chunk of today's show, kind of reacting to that Ian Rapoport report, and we'll break down some Trey Lance trade destinations as well. All right, we're 20 likes away. 20 likes away. Dustin's liked the video. Chad Jones liked the video. MJ has liked the video. If you've liked the video, comment. We'll give you a shout out. Like the video right now if you want today's show to get started. Robert has liked the video. Candy Kane, Corbin Britton, Clayton Lockhart, Chad Jones, Drew Baca, Richard Lococo, Bears fan, Gaming Wizard, 13 likes away. 9 likes away now. Des Powell has liked the video. Harrison Sanchez, Brooks 72, Daniel, Shelley, Christopher, Freddie, GM Evan Hinders, we're 6 likes away. MJ, again, has liked the video. Come on, 4 likes away. Almost there. Like the video. We're there. Boom. Great job, everybody. Mauricio, shout out to you. Thanks to everyone for liking today's video. Chris Ashford as well. Here's what's coming up on today's show. We're going to, Robert, be sure to use hashtag NFL or Super Chat. Coming up live on today's show, we're going to break down the latest NFL news and rumors. Then we're going to get into a mailbag. After the mailbag, we'll talk about some Trey Lance trade destinations. And then Peter Schrager of NFL Network just released a new NFL mock draft. So we will get into that as well. Do we want to hit that super chat on the mailbag or now?
Might as well do it on both. Show them some love.
Excellent.
It's the 60-second guarantee.
Corbin,
come on.
Hey, Sam Brown, guarantee you 60 seconds. It was more like 6 seconds. So shout out to producer Sam Brown behind the scenes. What's your best corner in the draft, in your opinion? Devin Witherspoon, 100%. Huge fan of Witherspoon, the Illinois corner. It's going to be really interesting to see where he lands. If the Raiders do not draft a quarterback, I think they're going to take Witherspoon at 7. But they've certainly been linked to Levis, Richardson, Stroud, some other quarterbacks. They might trade up for a quarterback, but I don't see Witherspoon falling that much further if he gets to 7. Again, what's coming up on today's show, news and rumors, mailbag, Trey Lance trade destinations, and the Peter Schrager mock draft reaction. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be breaking down the latest news and rumors surrounding 49ers quarterback Trey Lance. Could he be on the move? The 49ers are reportedly fielding calls for the former first-round pick. He was the 3rd overall pick in the 2021 draft. Less than 2 years later, they might be shopping him. Ian Rapoport tweeted this out this morning. Source says the 49ers have received inquiries from several teams looking into a potential trade for former number 3 pick quarterback Trey Lance. The conversations have been the result of San Francisco fielding the calls, not making them. with teams aware that Brock Purdy is likely the future starter. Now, before we get into more about this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Help Chat Sports get to 331,000 subscribers. Need less than 400 more. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you're watching this on Texans Today, subscribe to Texans Today as well for more Houston Texans news and rumors. So Trey Lance, this is not a huge shock that we're hearing that he could be on the move. It might have been a surprise a few weeks ago when Brock Purdy's health was a little bit more uncertain, but it's looking like Purdy's going to be ready early on in the season, if not before the season is set to begin, of course, recovering from that UCL injury that he suffered in the NFC Championship game. They also have Sam Darnold on this team as a backup quarterback. So apparently a lot of teams around the league believe that, hey, San Francisco, they're going to be going with Brock Purdy. Trey Lance, is he available? A lot of teams in need of quarterbacks that maybe are kind of unsure about some guys in the NFL draft that might be inquiring about Trey Lance. Ian Rapoport followed up that first tweet with this one. While no trade is imminent and the 49ers would almost certainly want to make sure Brock Purdy's rehab continues to go as smoothly as it's been going, the interest from other teams in Lance has been there. Taking a look at the career stats. And the thing with Trey Lance is, yeah, the potential's there, but he's certainly unproven. Just 4 career starts, 54.9% completion percentage, just under 800 passing yards, so roughly 200 passing yards per start, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks, 235 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown for the dual threat quarterback. Here's what the 49ers QB room looks like right now. So Brock Purdy, in less than a year, went from QB3 to QB1. They signed Sam Darnold this offseason. I think that if they shop Trey Lance, they'd certainly feel comfortable with Darnold, who looked pretty good in Carolina last year. They would feel comfortable with him being QB2. Jimmy Garoppolo has obviously departed for Las Vegas. So the 49ers quarterback room certainly interesting right now. Will Trey Lance get traded? What do you think? Go down in the comments section and predict it. Type Y for yes or type in for no down in the comments section. Again, the 49ers are apparently taking calls on the former first-round quarterback. And when I heard that earlier today from Ian Rapoport, there were 2 teams that immediately came to my mind. And the main reason being is their connection with Trey Lance. And I'll get to that in a second. But the 2 teams I thought of were the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans. And I believe the Houston Texans might be the front runners here to land Trey Lance in a possible trade, because there's recently been a lot of noise that the Texans won't take a quarterback at number 2 overall, which I think is pretty crazy, but that's been the speculation, that's been the rumor. GM Nick Caserio admitted the other day that his team has fielded calls about trading back from number 2 overall. So is trading for Trey Lance a possibility if the Texans are not sold on any quarterback outside of Bryce Young? Because apparently Bryce Young's really the only quarterback they're excited about. They're not sold on C.J. Stroud. They're not sold on Will Levis. They're not sold on Anthony Richardson. And they don't want to reach on a guy like maybe Hendon Hooker at number 2 overall. So it might make some sense here for the Texans to inquire about Trey Lance. And I fully expect them to reach out if they haven't already, because Ian Rapoport's saying that multiple teams have contacted the San Francisco 49ers. And another reason I think the Texans might make some sense here for Trey Lance is the connections with Houston. You have the new head coach, DeMeco Ryans. He came from San Francisco. He was the defensive coordinator the last 2 years in San Francisco. Not to mention the guy that DeMeco hired as his offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. He was the passing game coordinator in San Francisco last year, working directly with Trey Lance. So you have that San Francisco connection with the Houston Texans. And even before this tweet, this report from Ian Rapoport, the last couple of weeks, we've been thinking, man, if Trey Lance were to get moved, could the Texans inquire? I fully expect the Texans to be serious contenders here for quarterback Trey Lance if he gets moved. Got the draft to look forward to next week. Could a Trey Lance trade happen before the draft? Certainly possible. Be sure to go get ready for the draft by picking up your favorite team's NFL draft cap, official NFL draft cap, I might add, at chatsports.com/NFL draft hats. All of the draft hats are there, and I really like the color combinations with the draft hats this year. You got some of those. You got a couple flat bills. I know Harrison Graham has a similar looking Chicago Bears hat. Atlanta Falcons, another team we have on there. So go get ready for the draft by picking up the hat that your new favorite player is going to be wearing, right? These are the guys that will be repping your team once they get drafted by your team. Chatsports.com/NFL draft hats. That link is in the comments and the description of today's video. We just mentioned the Trey Lance trade rumors. Another player that has been in a lot of rumors as of late is Vikings running back Dalvin Cook. Could he get traded? He's certainly been the subject of trade rumors this offseason. However, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported earlier this week that the Vikings running back could get cut. And if that's the case, there's certainly going to be a lot of teams interested in his services because he has been one of the more consistent running backs in the NFL over the last couple of seasons. 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, multiple Pro Bowl appearances, and you look at the numbers have been really good, and he's put up those numbers when he hasn't been 100% the last year or two. His shoulder's kind of been banged up. His agent admitted that he was kind of avoiding contact to his injured shoulder, so he was not present at voluntary workouts in Minnesota earlier this week. He's in Florida right now, continuing to rehab his shoulder. He's expected to be 100% by the start of the season. Maybe he's just going to stay in Florida, not go back to Minnesota, because the Miami Dolphins here are the big favorites for his next team. There's plus 300 odds that he's going to stay in Minnesota, plus 250 odds that he goes to Miami. So according to Vegas here, there's actually a better chance of him going to Miami than staying in Minnesota. Some other teams to watch out for here: the Philadelphia Eagles, Arizona Cardinals, and New England Patriots. The Eagles are plus 450. The Cardinals are plus 600. And the Patriots are plus 750 here for Dalvin Cook's next team. Who should trade for Dalvin Cook? Go down in the comments section. Let me know your thoughts. Who should trade for the Vikings running back? 3 words: he's a Dolphin. And I agree with Vegas that I think it's more likely than not that Dalvin Cook is going to be a Miami Dolphin. They apparently reached out to the Vikings about a trade last month. They could not agree on the draft compensation, or at least on the trade compensation, because the Dolphins don't have a whole lot of draft picks. They decided not to trade for Cook. But if Cook gets cut, which looks likely at this point, and Fowler actually said he could be cut before next week's draft, I'd assume the Dolphins are going to be the front runners. And not to mention, Dalvin Cook is from Miami. He might take a pay cut to go back home to the Dolphins, and he was Jalen Ramsey's teammate at Florida State as well. So they might be getting the band back together down there in the 305. Speaking of the Dolphins, Barry Jackson, a Dolphins beat reporter, tweeted this out earlier about maybe the prospect of the Dolphins adding a running back. Dolphins assistant GM Marvin Allen said the team will keep options open with adding a running back in the NFL draft or free agency if the right one arises, possibly the right one being Dalvin Cook. We'll have to see what happens. Tua Tagovailoa also took the podium today and said this about if he contemplated retirement after a couple concussions this year. Yeah, I think I considered it for a time, having sat down with my family and my wife, kind of having those conversations. It would be hard for me to walk away from this game with how old I am. He's just 24 years old. With my son, I always dreamed of playing as long as I could, to the point where my son knew what he's watching. So Tua Tagovailoa admitting that he contemplated retirement after 2 confirmed concussions this past season, possibly 3 concussions that he suffered. We never got word on if the Bills game, that first Bills game, if he suffered a concussion in that game, but at least 2 confirmed concussions here for Tua Tagovailoa, both very scary concussions. And if you're an NFL fan, especially Dolphins fan, you're just hoping that Tua Tagovailoa can't stay healthy, because the sky is the limit if he can stay healthy. And may I remind y'all that when the Dolphins were 8-3, they were looking like a Super Bowl contender. Tua was second in MVP odds, only behind Patrick Mahomes. Dolphins go on a losing streak. Tua gets hurt. Obviously, that changes. But the sky is the limit for Tua if he can stay healthy. And to stay healthy, I think the Dolphins have to improve that offensive line. They still have a Holt left guard, and especially at right tackle. GM Chris Schrager said this morning that they expect Austin Jackson to start at right tackle, which probably does not bode well if you're a Dolphins fan. Hopefully they can address the right tackle position. Maybe they'll do that in the draft next week. Speaking of the draft, we're starting to see players take their final draft meetings. Today is the last day. Teams can meet with NFL draft prospects before the big night next Thursday. Here were some notable meetings that took place today. Quarterback C.J. Stroud meeting with the Atlanta Falcons. And the Falcons, they signed Taylor Heineke to be the backup to Desmond Ridder. They've committed to Desmond Ridder, but still taking the time here to meet with C.J. Stroud about a week before the draft. The Falcons have the number 8 overall pick. The Ravens a little bit further down, but a lot of uncertainty on if Lamar Jackson is going to be back next season. They have been linked to Richardson. They apparently are very high on Anthony Richardson. He met with the Baltimore Ravens today. Meanwhile, Will Anderson Jr. met with the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks have the number 5 overall pick. I'd be surprised if he fell number 5. Nolan Smith, we've seen his stock really rise here. Before the Combine, he was going to be what, an early day 2 pick? Now he might be a top 20 pick. He met with the Arizona Cardinals. And then Zay Flowers, the wide receiver from Boston College, he met with the Kansas City Chiefs. I should say he had a workout with the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes wanted to work out with them in Texas. So Zay Flowers in Texas today, working out with maybe his potential future quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs have the number 31 overall selection. It's going to be really interesting to see where Zay Flowers goes. Who should trade for Dalvin Cook? Go down in the comments section and let me know who should trade for Dalvin Cook. I think it's going to be the Miami Dolphins. We'll have to wait and see. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/chatsportstv. We'll certainly continue to keep you updated on all NFL news and rumors leading up to next week's NFL draft. No, sorry about that, Sammy. No, that's all good. Who should trade for Dalvin Cook? Let me know down in the comments section. Chad Jones is saying the Fins. I'm shocked, Chad, that you're saying the Fins. Mauricio is saying Miami as well. Corbin Britton saying, I really think Dallas will draft Zach Charbonnet from UCLA. Might be reaching if they take him in the first round. We'll see. Harrison Sanchez saying the Chargers should trade for Dalvin Cook. Well, if Austin Eckler's not back and he's someone else who's been in trade rumors, then sure. Florentino is saying the Fins. I tend to agree. I think it makes a lot of sense for both sides for this trade to take place. And the Dolphins had the 27th ranked rushing offense in the league, and they re-signed all 4 of their backs. It was kind of weird. Corbin Britton, Super Chat, we appreciate you, man. What's your value on Trey Lance? I think it depends on the team. If you're the Texans and you have the number 33 overall pick, that's basically a first-round pick, right? Normally the first round would be 32 picks. This year it's 31. So the Texans have the 33rd overall pick. I think that should be enough to get it done. But if you're a team like the Titans and you have pick 41, then it might take a second and a fourth to get this pick done, or maybe a second and a fifth. That's my value on Lance. I'd say an early second-round pick or a mid to late second-round pick and an additional pick on top of that. We'll also answer that question in the mailbag, Corbin. We appreciate you super chatting to the show. That mailbag's coming up later on today's show. If you want to shout out or to get on the mailbag, certainly super chat, and we'll answer your questions there. Coming up, we're going to break down the top 5 Trey Lance trade destinations. Before we get into it, Sam, I'm curious to hear from you. Where do you think Trey Lance ends up?
Oh, if I had to put money out today, which I do like to do, I think a really sneaky one is Tampa Bay. I think that's a really sneaky one because
they are in my top 5.
A little spoiler alert, a little behind the scenes for y'all there. I mean, the thing is, and you know me, OU alum, Baker Mayfield, my favorite player in Oklahoma history.
I'm also a Baker guy. You know this.
I'm not sure that he's going to be there beyond this season. And so I think that they're okay with potentially not being as good, taking that risk and playing Baker and starting Baker. And if they're bad, then they've got a higher draft pick. They've got some cap space they need to kind of relieve here. That's the other Florida team to keep in mind, since we've been talking about the Dolphins. But I think that's a sneaky team to watch. They've got to find their long-term guy post Tom Brady eventually. So why not potentially take a shot on a guy like Trey Lance?
Another sleeper team, and I'll break down my thoughts more about this in the segment. Minnesota Vikings. Very, very serious team to watch here. Very serious team to watch. All right, we got that segment coming up right now. Trey Lance, trade destinations, top 5, and I'll give you a few honorable mentions as well. Welcome in to NFL Daily. I am Will Scott. We got some news that Trey Lance could be on the move. So on today's show, we're going to be breaking down the top 5 trade destinations for the San Francisco 49ers quarterback. There is a report from Ian Rapoport that the 49ers have gotten several trade calls for the former number 3 overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. He's kind of unproven. Just 8 career games played, 4 starts. Of course, he was going to be the Niners starter this entire past season, but he did have the season-ending ankle injury in Week 2. We did not see him after that. He missed most of the 2022 season, of course, after that season-ending ankle injury. There's no surprise to me that several teams have interest, and here's why. There are several teams that probably need a quarterback or maybe feel like their current quarterback is not the guy, right? And they might be not sold on Anthony Richardson or Will Levis or some other quarterbacks in the NFL draft. Let's say a team like the Titans or the Commanders that don't have that high of a pick and they don't really feel like their guy at quarterback is going to fall to them. Maybe trading for Trey Lance might make some sense for a team like that. That's why I'm not surprised that we're seeing several teams have interest here, because at least for me, I'm not really sold on any quarterback outside of Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud in this class. Taking a look at Trey Lance's stats through 4 starts in his career. 2 starts came in 2021, and then the first 2 games this past season before the season-ending ankle injury. 54.9% completion percentage, nearly 800 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks, 235 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. And I'll say this, I wouldn't say he passed the eye test in these 4 starts. There were certainly some growing pains. And when San Francisco took him, keep in mind he was an FCS product from North Dakota State. You certainly knew he was going to be a project. But the potential is there. Where will Trey Lance get traded? I think he is going to get traded, but where do you think he's going to get traded? Let me know down in the comment section. It is the pinned comment on today's video. So when ad break comes, go down, chime in, let me know, where is Trey Lance going to get traded? Before I get into my top 5 destinations, I wanted to shout out some honorable mentions, some teams that probably aren't going to be in serious contention to land them, but might at least inquire. The Atlanta Falcons might be a team to watch here. I think they need a quarterback. They apparently don't, because they have committed to Desmond Ridder. And look, I'm not saying that Desmond Ridder's not going to be a good quarterback. I think he has a lot of potential. I really liked him at Cincinnati. But we just talked about a second ago, Trey Lance is unproven. You can certainly say the same about Desmond Ridder. Maybe you trade for Lance, you bring in some competition there for Desmond Ridder. It is worth noting, though, the Falcons did sign Taylor Heineke to be the backup quarterback, so that QB room would be a little bit crowded. Number 2 honorable mention is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, you know, what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson? Lamar Jackson requested a trade. He might not be back. If that's the case, it could be possible, if Lamar does not come back to Baltimore, that they trade for Trey Lance. I don't hate the fit, him going and playing under John Harbaugh over there in Baltimore, and then with new offensive coordinator Todd Monken. I don't like the fit at all. Todd Monken, excuse me. Washington Commanders, number 3 here on my honorable mentions list. I understand they've committed to Sam Howell. They feel like Howell's the guy, but Howell only has 1 career start. Now, did he look good in that regular season finale against Dallas? Yeah, but if I'm Ron Rivera and I'm that front office and my job is on the line and I got a new owner coming, I'm a little bit nervous with Sam Howell. I'd feel a little bit better with Trey Lance as my quarterback. We're going to have you covered if a Trey Lance trade goes down, so subscribe for nonstop coverage of the latest NFL news and rumors, and we have the NFL draft coming up next week. We're going to have the best NFL draft coverage for you, not just on YouTube, but in general. You know how you're watching like down to the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, ESPN's in commercial break, you miss your favorite team's pick. No commercial breaks here at Chat Sports, so be sure to subscribe and join us for NFL draft coverage next month. Let's get in to my top 5 Trey Lance trade destinations, and we begin with maybe a dark horse here. The Minnesota Vikings coming in at number 5, and yeah, they have Kirk Cousins, but I think it's possible that a Kirk Cousins for Trey Lance swap could happen. You heard Mike Florio kind of talk about at the NFL Combine the possibility of this happening because you have the Kyle Shanahan and Kirk Cousins connection. They worked together when Kirk Cousins was in Washington. Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator. He's always been a huge fan of Kirk Cousins, and the Vikings would create $10 million in cap space if they traded him after June 1st. Kirk Cousins is a free agent after this next season. Again, Florio mentioned the 49ers to be in the conversation if a Kirk Cousins trade does go down. And look, I think Kirk Cousins is good. Kind of a polarizing figure, though, amongst Vikings fans because he really just has not won anything in Minnesota, has not gotten the job done in the big games, and has not really gotten them that far in the postseason. So when you look at a guy like Trey Lance, who has a lot of potential, is much younger than Kirk Cousins, it might make some sense. Not to mention, Trey Lance grew up in Minnesota. He grew up a big Vikings fan. It would be a homecoming for Trey Lance. So maybe a win-win for both Cousins and Lance, because Cousins, if he goes to San Francisco, would probably be on the NFC favorite, I think at least, the NFC favorite 49ers if he goes there. And then Trey Lance would go back home to Minnesota, and I think a fresh start would bode really well for Trey Lance. You get to work with a young coach, too, and Kevin O'Connell, who did a fantastic job in his first season in Minnesota. So Patrick Seatman, the host of our Minnesota Vikings channel here at Chat Sports, drew up this trade idea. Vikings received Trey Lance and 2 third-round picks this year. The 49ers receive Kirk Cousins. Interesting trade. I don't know if the 49ers do this trade. I think the Vikings might, but let me know down in the comment section who wins this trade. Type MIN for the Minnesota Vikings or type SF for the Niners down in the comment section. Who wins this trade? And you might say, oh, you know, the Niners are giving up too much there. Well, but Kirk Cousins is pretty good, borderline top 10 quarterback. And if you trade for him and you have a quarterback room that consists of Brock Purdy and Kirk Cousins, let's say they're a little bit uncertain about Purdy's health beginning of this season. They want to have a comfortability level in terms of who's going to be their quarterback. Kirk Cousins might make some sense. And, of course, as we mentioned, Kyle Shanahan has always been a big fan. Going out to number 4, it is the Las Vegas Raiders, and they have the number 7 overall pick. It's very possible, maybe even likely, that they are going to draft a quarterback, but if they opt maybe to go a different route, trade for Trey Lance, they could recreate the Jimmy G Trey Lance quarterback room that we saw in San Francisco last season. How wild would that be? I don't know how realistic it is. I think the 3 teams we're going to talk about here in a second might be a little bit more realistic, but Las Vegas, I would imagine, has at least inquired about Trey Lance. Again, multiple teams have reached out to San Francisco about a possible trade. The Raiders probably going to add to that quarterback room via trade, maybe via the draft. Number 3 on my list is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, they're 2 quarterbacks right now, Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. They do not have a third quarterback on this roster. So right now it's the plan for those 2 to compete for the starting job in camp. And do they feel comfortable with that? Maybe. But if you were to add a third guy to the mix here, and that third guy is the former number 3 overall pick, I just think that's a much better situation for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I'm a Baker Mayfield believer. I actually think he's going to do a good job in Tampa Bay. But if they're not completely sold, then maybe a Trey Lance trade makes some sense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They could certainly look to add a quarterback. I think the top two contenders, though, kind of separate themselves from the rest of the bunch. And number two is the Tennessee Titans. There's some connections here between the Titans and Trey Lance, beginning with Ran Carthon, the former 49ers executive for 5 years, so was in that front office drafting Trey Lance. He is now the Tennessee Titans general manager. A lot of speculation, obviously, surrounding Ryan Tannehill's future in Tennessee. I don't think Tannehill's the guy there going forward. And then maybe Malik Willis could be shipped to San Francisco in a potential deal to be one of the backups behind Brock Purdy. Tennessee kind of gave Willis a shot this year, didn't like what they saw from him, opted to start Josh Dobbs in their final 2 games with the playoffs on the line. So I don't really think they feel great about the former third-round pick Malik Willis over there in Tennessee. And that's why I think the Titans should go all in here. I think this trade makes a lot of sense for Tennessee. You got to know Ran Carthon thinks highly of Trey Lance. He drafted Trey Lance, number 3 overall, less than 2 years ago. Tennessee, this makes a lot of sense for the Titans to inquire here about Trey Lance. As we're breaking down the top 5 trade destinations here for Trey Lance, and number 1 on my list is the Houston Texans. Could Lance be H-Town bound? Because there's been a lot of rumors that Houston may not take a quarterback at number 2, or they might trade down. Head coach DeMeco Ryans obviously was in San Francisco as the defensive coordinator for the last 2 years, and then the guy he hired to be his OC, Bobby Slowick, was the passing game coordinator working directly with Trey Lance. So Trey Lance has some connections with that Houston Texans coaching staff. I do believe that the Texans are the top trade destination for Trey Lance, and they will make this trade to bring Trey Lance to the Houston Texans. I think it makes some sense if the Texans are not sold on any quarterback outside of Bryce Young, because right now the Texans have the number 2 overall pick. It looks like Bryce Young is going number 1 overall to Carolina. They're not sold on Stroud. They're not sold on any quarterbacks in this class outside of Young. They've talked about trading back. They've talked about maybe just drafting Will Anderson at 2 or Tyree Wilson. So I don't know what the Texans are going to do. But if it's true that they're not sold on any other quarterback outside of Young, and they know they're not going to get Young, then maybe they'll seriously look in to trading for Trey Lance. And I do believe the number 33 overall pick would be enough to land the former number 3 overall pick. Now, what should the Texans do? Should they draft a quarterback? I still lean toward drafting C.J. Stroud. Or should they trade for Trey Lance? Type D for draft a quarterback, or type T for trade for Trey Lance. Down in the comment section, go down and chime in. What should Houston do here in this in the next week? So breaking down again the top 5 Trey Lance trade destinations. At number 5, the Minnesota Vikings. At number 4, the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 3, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then 2 AFC South rivals, I think, are going to separate themselves from the rest. Number 2, the Tennessee Titans. Ran Carthon, former 49ers executive. He is the GM in Tennessee. He drafted Trey Lance. And then former 49ers defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans, the new head coach in Houston. Bobby Slowick, the OC, worked with Trey Lance as well. I believe the Houston Texans are the number 1 trade destination for Trey Lance. Where will Trey Lance play next season? Go down in the comments section. Let me know. Corbin Britton says that Houston makes sense because of DeMeco Ryans. I would tend to agree. I would agree. Look, I'm saying what I think is going to happen. If I'm Nick Caserio and I'm that Texans front office, I'm drafting C.J. Stroud. That's just what I'm doing, Sam. I'm taking C.J. Stroud.
It seems like the logical move, but we know how the Texans operate as a franchise as well. They don't necessarily do the things that make sense. That's not really their style. So I could very easily see what some people could see it as smoke. I could very easily see that as a real report. As stupid as that would be, as much as I think they should go with C.J. Stroud at number 2 if Bryce Young goes 1, as much as I think they shouldn't even bat an eye and go Bryce Young at number 2 if C.J. Stroud somehow goes number 1. But that's not always their MO, and you never know exactly what a team is thinking. You're not in the room.
Right.
So how much can you really know about the process and how they come to that conclusion?
I'll say this. I think the Texans are better off trading for Trey Lance than they are not drafting. I'll say this. I think the Texans are better off trading for Trey Lance than drafting, let's say, Will Levis or Richardson. I think if I'm the Texans, I would rather do that. But when you have C.J. Stroud guaranteed to be available to you and you pass on him to trade for Lance, not sure how I feel about it. But I think if I'm the Texans, I'd rather trade for Lance than draft Richardson or Levis. And if the Texans pass on a quarterback at 2 and don't trade for Trey Lance, I can't imagine what that fan base is going to be thinking. And, that Texans fan base, Sam, has been checked out for so many years. And they have re-energized that fan base with the hiring of DeMeco Ryans. You're going to push the fans away once again if you do not nail that number 2 pick.
Do you think that DeMeco Ryans is okay with potentially, running it back to an extent for a year with the chance of getting one of those top 2 quarterbacks?
I'll say this.
In 2024, I should say, Caleb Williams or Drake May.
And I think if you're the Texans, you might be thinking, well, we don't love Stroud, we don't love Levis, we don't love Richardson. Let's just tank again and get Drake May or Caleb Williams next year. But what the Texans have done this offseason is very much not tank. They've gotten a lot better this offseason. They signed Devin Singletary. They got Dalton Schultz. They signed Jimmy Ward. They made all these moves. This is a much better roster. Right now, without the quarterback that they're probably going to draft or without Trey Lance if they trade for him, this to me is at least a 5 or 6 win football team. That's not going to be bad enough to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks. It's risky.
There's a lot to figure out between now and next Thursday if you're Houston. We'll see. I mean, to be fair, by the way, that process of thought of maybe we can go ahead and tank and have a shot at Caleb Williams or Drake May, I guarantee you at least a third of the teams in the NFL have had that discussion at some point this offseason. Right. At least.
And if you're the Texans, you gave a franchise legend the head coaching job. You have got to put DeMeco Ryans in the best possible position to succeed. And if you don't, you have failed DeMeco Ryans, and you have failed this fan base that has invested in you, that you have brought back in a sense, because this fan base has been checked out for so many years. And then you hire DeMeco Ryans, you make all these good moves in free agency, you brought the fans back. But if you do not handle this next week well, if you don't take C.J. Stroud at 2 or pass on a quarterback at 2 and then don't trade for Trey Lance and you just handle this very poorly, you're gonna lose the fan base again. It's really that simple. You can ask me about that. You can ask me about anything you want if you use hashtag NFL or Super Chat to skip the line. Already have some Super Chats to get to, but Super Chat to skip the line to guarantee yourself a spot on the show. What'd you say, Sammy? Of course, man. Hashtag NFL or Super Chat. Got that mailbag coming up right now. Rest in peace to a Hall of Famer, by the way, Dave Wilcox. Just passed away at the age of 80. The Pro Football Hall of Fame tweeting that out. Rest in peace to a legend, Dave Wilcox. Wanted to address that news here before the mailbag. Class of 2000, just recently undergone heart surgery. So certainly prayers out to the Wilcox family. Hashtag NFL or Super Chat to skip the line. We'll get into that mailbag right now. Ready to roll, Sammy?
Yes, and by the way, Corbin Britton gets the first question to lead off the mailbag.
Outstanding. He is super chatted and skipped the line.
Exactly.
It's like a fast pass at Disney World.
It's funny how that works out. I'll remind you, the 60-second guarantee, as long as Will stops talking when I tell him to stop, we will get your super chat on screen within 60 seconds if you send it. But whoever sends the next super chat is going to be the second question in our mailbag.
I will do my best, Sam. Well, Corbin's like, you already answered it. We're going to answer it again, Corbin.
We just wanted to show you more love. We just wanted to show you some more props.
We appreciate you super chatting, Corbin. Absolutely. All right, that mailbag's coming up right now. Again, to get your questions on the mailbag, use hashtag NFL or super chat. Thanks for watching another edition of the NFL Daily Mailbag here on Chat Sports. I am Will Scott, answering questions live during our Wednesday live show. We go live twice a week. We'll be live during the draft. So be sure to subscribe to the channel for more NFL news and rumors, and especially draft coverage. First question coming in from Corbin Britton. He super chatted. We appreciate super chat, Corbin. What's your value on Trey Lance? So yeah, Trey Lance has been in some trade rumors here as of late after Ian Rapoport said the 49ers have taken some calls on the former first-round pick. I think, Corbin, it depends on what team is trading for him. If you're the Texans, I think the number 33 overall pick alone is enough to get Trey Lance. That's basically a first-round pick. You're right there outside the first round. But if you're a team like the Titans and you pick, middle of the second round, number 41 overall, then you might have to give up a second and a fourth. So it depends on the team. I would say either early second should get it done, or a second-round pick and then a early day 3 pick should be enough to get a deal for Trey Lance done. Jay Elam, what's up, man? Oh, this is interesting. $2. We appreciate the super chat. Dak Prescott for Trey Lance. I do not think that's something Jerry Jones is going to entertain, and I don't know why the 49ers would really want that either. The whole point of San Francisco trading Trey Lance is the fact that they believe in Brock Purdy. So I don't see them trading for Dak Prescott and taking on that massive contract when they have a pretty good starter right now. And Purdy, it's a lot cheaper. Mr. Elvin's going to be a lot cheaper than the $40 million per year that Dak is making. Robert, what's up, man? What is your Falcons record prediction going to be this season? That's a great question. If they don't sign another quarterback, I would say, or don't trade for Lamar Jackson, let's say, or don't draft a quarterback, I'd say 7-10. This roster's certainly gotten a lot better, but I just don't think that the quarterback play is going to be where you need to be. But that division is wide open. I mean, you might win that division at 7-10 this year. You never know. I mean, the Saints got better, but certainly some question marks around Dennis Allen. So that division is going to be wide open, Robert. You go 9-8, exceed expectations, at least my expectations a little bit, you might win that division. Cheating Astro. It should say defending champ Astro, but that's none of my business. Who could be a surprise first-round pick? That is a great question. Certainly a topic of conversation here in the next week leading up to the draft. I would say Jack Campbell, the Iowa linebacker. Really like him as a prospect. One of the best, if not the best, off-ball linebacker in this class. Had a phenomenal season for the Hawkeyes. 125 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble. I think his ceiling is unbelievable, and I think some teams feel the same way. And this could be a situation where, okay, if you take him, your critics are going to say you reached, but he could become, a Pro Bowl caliber player and could be that his entire career. Name a sleeper first-round prospect in the 2023 NFL Draft. Maybe Darnell Washington is the name to watch. They could sneak in to the first round. Name a sleeper first-round prospect down in the comment section. Alec G. Does Jalen Carter fall out of the top 10? 2 weeks ago, I would have said yes. Now I'm going to say no. Most mock drafts that I'm seeing have Carter going number 5 overall to the Seattle Seahawks. He's arguably the most talented player in this draft. Now, he obviously comes with some baggage, was involved in that fatal car wreck, a couple weeks ago, and there's certainly some questions he's going to have to answer about that when he's meeting with these teams. But his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, is refusing to meet with any team outside the top 10. He's very confident, and Drew Rosenhaus is arguably the best agent in the business, and he's very confident that he's going to be a top 10 pick. So I would say no. I think he goes number 5 overall to Seattle. I would say the lowest he's going to fall, number 10 overall to the Philadelphia Eagles. Chad Jones. Who? Chad Jones. We appreciate you watching the show as always, my man. I heard Austin Jackson is doing different training. Do you think it'll help him? I'll say this about Austin Jackson. The potential is there, but he's not proven enough for me to feel comfortable about him being the right tackle. Look, he was a first-round pick out of USC for a reason. He was good at USC. He's strong. He's physical. He was showing some signs of improvement last offseason, but he gets hurt in the season opener, then gets hurt again when he comes back like 12 weeks later. So he's just not proven enough for me to feel comfortable protecting Tua Tagovailoa's blind side. If Tua didn't have the injury history that he had, I'd feel different about this. But you have got to do everything you can to protect Tua. Cam Fleming's still out there and available. You have some really good right tackle prospects like Cody Mock that you could draft in the second round next week. I would not feel great if I'm Tua Tagovailoa, if Austin Jackson is protecting my blind side for the entire 2023 season. You got to keep Tua healthy. But hopefully that training program that you mentioned, Chad, will help AJ out. Madden Field, we appreciate the question. Will the Cowboys make another move? If so, who will they get? If you're talking about free agency specifically, I think it's possible that Dallas could make another move here. You look at their running back situation. Let's say they don't get Bijan Robinson in the draft, and Bijan's been a guy linked to Dallas a lot. Maybe they'll look to trade for a running back. I don't see them really giving up a lot to get a guy like Austin Eckler. But maybe they'll trade for running back. We'll see that if they don't draft one. Be sure to subscribe and join our weekly mailbags to get on the show. Also, turn on your notifications by hitting the notification bell below. And if you do that, you're going to get an alert on your phone whenever we put out a video and also whenever we go live. 60-second promise from Sam Brown. Super chat coming in here from Corbin Britton. We appreciate another super chat from our guy Corbin. Did Jalen Hurts just ruin Lamar's chances? $230 million. Well, I think Lamar's going to want a similar contract. I mean, Jalen Hurts got, $230 million total, $179 million guaranteed, average out $51 million per year. Lamar's probably going to want something pretty similar. Now, there's reports that Lamar turned down $200 million guaranteed, which if he did that, that's not a good call on his part. So we'll see what happens. But no, I think Jalen Hurts just kind of reset the market in a sense. Richard Lococo, Bears fan, number one, what's up? Who do you guys think is a blue chip player if the Bears stay at number 9? Peter Skoronski, maybe? I like Skoronski, the offensive tackle at Northwestern, staying in the Chicago area, taking him at number 9. I think that makes a lot of sense, and we've seen him linked to them a lot. Des Powell, most overpaid player thus far. I say Jalen Hurts, dude, is getting paid for being good on a Super Bowl team and still couldn't come up with a ring. Des, did you watch Super Bowl? I mean, he was outstanding in that game. That loss was not on Jalen Hurts. The defense collapsed in the second half. Jalen Hurts balled out in that game, balled out the entire year. Had a huge role in getting Philadelphia that far. I think Jalen Hurts deserves that type of money. When you look at his per-year numbers in terms of cap hit over the next 4 years, actually pretty team-friendly. Cheaper than Daniel Jones. Thank you, producer Sam Brown. Next season, I should say. So I'm a Jalen Hurts guy. Some people might not feel the same way about him as I do, and that's fine. But if you're the Eagles, you had to pay him because he's going to be a free agent after next season, and he just got you to the Super Bowl. Got the draft coming up next week. Go and rep your favorite team by going to chatsports.com/NFL draft. Hats, you're going to be wearing the same hat that the player that your team drafts is going to be wearing next week. So go and get ready for the draft by picking up your official NFL draft hats at chatsports.com/NFL draft hats. Have all the teams on there. I see David Storm saying he's going to go get his Dolphins draft cap. chatsports.com/NFL draft hats. That link is in the comments and the description of today's video. Go and take advantage. Get this hat before the draft next week. If you order it now, you can get it in time in all likelihood. GM Evan Hinder says, I think the Raiders will draft Jake Hanner. Oh, yes, another Jake Hanner fan. Quarterback from Fresno State in the third round. He's like Jared Goff 2.0. I love Jake Hanner. So get this, Evan. Before this college football season, I did this TikTok for Chat Sports, and I ranked my top 5 college quarterbacks. Jake Hanner was number 5 on that list. He was ahead of Anthony Richardson, actually. Big fan of Jake Hanner. He's a top 5 quarterback in this draft class for me, which might sound crazy, but he is. I like him a lot better than Tanner McKee, quite frankly. Low-key like him better than Will Levis. So we'll see where he goes. 3rd round is probably, a decent projection there, Evan. But if the Raiders do not take a quarterback at number 7 overall, they'll likely take a backup for Jimmy G a little bit later on. Maybe Jake Hanner's going to be that guy who balled out in the Senior Bowl MVP. Harrison Sanchez, thanks for the question, man. Will J.C. Jackson end up being a bust free agent pickup for the Chargers? No. First of all, that deal was a steal. I can't believe he did not make more money. So no, I don't think so. DJ48, will an Aaron Rodgers trade happen before the draft? Man, I don't know. We thought this trade was going to happen weeks ago. We're filming this on April 19th. There's been no trade. I do not know what's going to happen. And we've been hearing reports that the Jets and the Packers haven't talked in weeks. I'm not optimistic about a trade happening before the draft. Will an Aaron Rodgers trade happen before the NFL draft? Type Y for yes or type N for no down in the comment section. Can you imagine if Aaron Rodgers changes his mind and retires or doesn't want to go to the Jets? What are the Jets going to do? I don't know. RC Plane Builder 2. What are the chances that Atlanta trades back in the draft? And if so, who will they trade with, and what will they get in return? I don't think they're going to trade back, but let's say, Richardson falls to 8, team wants to trade up for a quarterback, then sure, you can never count out a team trading back. In terms of who they will trade with, I expect if they trade back, it's probably going to be for a team that needs a quarterback, maybe the Titans, maybe the Commanders. Titans are at 11, so them trading up 3 spots might make some sense. What will they get in return? It depends on how far back they move. If they trade with the Commanders, move back 8 spots, they might get a future first. If they trade back with the Titans and maybe a second. We'll see. But I think Atlanta should stay in that spot at number 8. Drew Baca, thanks for the question. Witherspoon to the Raiders, and I'm a big Witherspoon fan, as I said earlier. Would be rad. Pair him back up with Nate Hobbs. I'm a big Devin Witherspoon fan. He's CB1 for me in this draft. I know the Raiders probably are thinking about drafting a quarterback, but him at 7 would be a great, great pickup. Ozzy Osmond, thanks for the super chat. $5 coming in. Cousins going to a team to replace a backup quarterback who went to the NFC Championship. It's Case Keenum all over again. You're right, Case Keenum led the Vikings to the NFC Championship game. They get rid of him, bring in Kirk Cousins, and they haven't been back to the NFC Championship, have they, producer Sam Brown? No, they have not. Kirk Cousins, obviously an upgrade over Keenum, but in terms of the team getting further than they did with Case Keenum, that's not something they did. But if San Francisco brings in Cousins, and I don't think they should, I think Purdy's the guy, then I think they'd make at least the NFC Championship game. Pat Norris, why do we base Anthony Richardson as a first-round pick because he had a good combine? He was subpar last year in the SEC. Pat, I'm with you, man. I've never been like a huge, oh my God, he had a good combine type of guy. I'm more of a film guy. And I watched a lot of SEC football this year. And I remember watching that first game, Florida against Utah. And I went into that game very skeptical of Anthony Richardson. And then he was making all those crazy plays, and he was looking like Cam Newton. I'm like, oh my God, I was wrong. But then he did not have a game like that the rest of the season. He was a little bit inconsistent. I thought he should have come back for another year and developed a little bit more. I obviously understand why he didn't, because he's going to be a top 10 pick in all likelihood, maybe even a top 5 pick. But I'm with you, man. I'm more of a tape guy than a combine results guy, and the tape for Anthony Richardson is not as good as Stroud or Young or maybe even some other quarterbacks like Hendon Hooker. For me, top 2 quarterbacks kind of separate themselves. I got Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. Then number 3, it's Hendon Hooker for me. He's QB3. It's not Anthony Richardson. Not saying, though, that Anthony Richardson doesn't have potential. He can be good. Daniel, thanks for the question. if Dallas doesn't like who they want at number 26, should they trade back and get an extra second to get Darnell Washington from Georgia? I've seen a mock draft, Daniel. It has the Cowboys taking Darnell at 26. I don't think that's a huge reach because he's probably going to be an early second-round pick. But, yeah, I mean, if they want to trade back a few spots, let's say the Chiefs want to trade up for a wide receiver. You trade back 5 spots, you add a second-round pick, you get Darnell at 31. That might make a lot of sense for Dallas. I would not rule it out. I also would not rule out Dallas maybe trading up for a guy like Bijan Robinson. Name a sleeper first-round prospect in the 2023 draft. Let me know. Sam, do you agree with this from Corbin? Hooker is officially on QB2 watch. Can he be the second quarterback taken?
Would be electric, but no.
But think about this. Like 2 weeks ago, I think we all would agree that Hooker's going to be a middle second round guy. Now, it looks like he's going to be a first-round guy, and we're going to get into a mock draft here in a second that has him going top 15.
I refuse to believe that will actually happen.
I tend to agree.
This isn't like teams learn from mistakes like Brandon Weeden drafting a 25-plus-year-old quarterback.
So age is a concern for you, though.
Age is a concern for me. I think he's not peaked, but I just don't know how much more room he has to grow. His knee, he blew out his knee. Like that shouldn't be ignored. Like
right.
For teams that are drafting him, you should be drafting him. If they're drafting him in round 1, they can't expect him to play week 1.
Right.
Because he played for, Tom likes to call it, the Mickey Mouse offense at Tennessee. A lot of half-field reads, pretty much everything outside of the hashes, never had to throw over the middle, really, for the most part, and didn't really do great whenever he did have to. So there are concerns that need developing. I get character matters, and I get that he's
right.
A great character guy and interviewed well and stuff, but I see
arguably the best quarterback in college football this year.
I think he was.
Yeah.
I think it was till he tore his ACL. I mean, 2 interceptions last season and 5 over 2 years at Tennessee. That's impressive. There are the downsides and the negatives are just enough for me to take him out of round 1.
For me, I feel like if he's a first-round guy, you're a little bit nervous. But if he falls to you in the second round, that's a steal.
You feel great.
You feel great.
I'd be so much more comfortable with that.
Right.
He's not worth.
Not sure if you want to spend a first-round pick on him.
He's not worth his first-round pick. He's just not.
But
sorry.
I think he is going to be a first-round pick.
I'm
and
sorry.
Peter Schrager agrees.
Matthew Peterson, our Vols fan in the office. He's not.
I don't disagree. Name a sleeper first-round prospect. Christopher saying Jack Campbell. I think a lot of people are saying Jack Campbell. Dustin, hate to break it to you, Deuce Vaughn is not going to be a first-round pick. That being said, I love Deuce Vaughn. And if I had a third-round pick, if I had to spend a third or fourth-round pick on him, I wouldn't hate it. Logan saying Jonathan Mingo. Yeah, I would agree, Corbin. Deuce is late day 2, early day 3. Tank Dell. That's interesting. Tank Dell says Junior Estrada. Yeah, maybe if Zay Flowers is off the board and Johnston's off the board, and, all those guys. Sean saying Zay Flowers. A couple weeks ago, maybe. Not anymore. He's going to be a first-round pick. Chulor saying Drew Sanders. I really like Drew Sanders. Linebacker out of Arkansas. Could be a late day 1 guy. We'll see. Well, speaking of the draft, we're going to get you guys a segment reacting to the first mock draft from Good Morning Football's Peter Schrager. That's coming up on the show right now. On today's show, we are reacting to the first mock draft from NFL Network's Peter Schrager, and it certainly is an interesting mock draft that has one quarterback that might not go first round, going number 11 overall. So we'll break down all the picks here from Peter Schrager's mock draft with about a week until the 2023 NFL draft. And it is worth noting that Schrager's mock, and he's very much in the know, has a lot of sources. He said his mock is based on what he's hearing. So not necessarily what he would do if he was in all these GM shoes, but what he thinks is going to happen, what he's hearing might happen next week. And we're going to have you covered next week. So be sure to subscribe for the best NFL draft coverage here on YouTube. ESPN, they'll go into commercial break, kind of in the later rounds. There's no commercial breaks here at Chat Sports. So if you want the best NFL draft coverage, subscribe to the channel, and it's 100% free. We're going to have a lot of fun next week. YouTube.com/ChatSportsTV. Go and subscribe to the channel right now and join us next week for the draft. Let's get into Schrager's mock. No surprise. Number 1 overall, it is the Alabama quarterback, Bryce Young. He is going to the Carolina Panthers, and most analysts and experts are saying this is pretty much locked in, that Bryce Young is going to be the number 1 overall pick. At first, I kind of thought that was noise. It's too much noise now for me not to believe it, that Bryce Young is going to be the number 1 overall pick next week. Now, what are the Texans going to do at number 2? Schrager saying they're going to trade down with their division rival Colts, with the Colts acquiring the first-round pick in this, I should say the number 2 overall pick, first-round pick in this year's draft. The Texans get the number 4 overall pick, so they trade down 2 spots and get DeForest Buckner, who I'm sure D'Amico Ryans would love, or a second and third-round pick. So we'll see, but I'd be a little bit surprised if the Texans traded with their arch-rival Indianapolis Colts and let them take their franchise quarterback, who Schrager believes it's going to be C.J. Stroud, the quarterback from Ohio State. Now, if I'm Nick Caserio, there's no way I'm trading down with the Colts. I'm just going to take C.J. Stroud too. But we've heard a lot about the Texans not being sold on a quarterback outside of Young. They might trade down. They might not take a quarterback. It is going to be fascinating and maybe even the story of the draft to see what the Texans are going to do next week at number 2 overall. I do believe, and I agree with Peter Schrager, that Will Anderson is going to be the first non-quarterback off the board. The edge rusher from Alabama mocked here to the Cardinals at number 3. Texans, they trade down according to Schrager. They take Tyree Wilson, probably the second best defensive player, maybe third behind Anderson and Carter. But he has them taking Tyree Wilson here. So staying in the state of Texas, going from Texas Tech to Houston. Number 5 overall, the Seahawks take a quarterback. They just gave Geno that big contract. But Schrager's saying they're going to take Anthony Richardson, number 5 overall, which would certainly be one of the big shockers of the draft. Should the Seahawks draft a quarterback? Obviously, they paid Geno, but that contract is somewhat flexible after this year, so maybe see how Geno does this year. If he's not your franchise guy going forward, you have Anthony Richardson. Type Y for yes or type in for no down in the comment section. Should the Seahawks draft a quarterback? Jalen Carter, here he is going number 6 overall to the Detroit Lions. And there's been a lot of talk about where's Carter going to go. And a couple weeks ago, it was like, man, could he fall, late first round? I don't think that's going to happen anymore. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick. Schrager has him going number 6 overall. Peter Skoronski's been mocked to the Bears a lot, but Schrager has him going number 7 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders could do a lot of different things here. They go O-line, they go corner, maybe Witherspoon. They certainly could go with a quarterback as well, but Schrager has them going with Skoronski, the offensive lineman out of Northwestern. Nolan Smith, his stock has risen significantly since he won the NFL Combine, probably our biggest winner from the Combine. Number 8 overall, staying in the state of Georgia, the Georgia Bulldog mocked here to the Atlanta Falcons. Christian Gonzalez, probably CB2 for me, but he's the first corner off the board here in Schrager's mock draft out of Oregon going to the Chicago Bears. The Bears adding to that defense. Number 10 overall, it is Bijan Robinson. He has been linked a lot to Philly. They lost Miles Sanders in free agency. They could use a running back. Bijan to Philly would be a lot of fun. This is wild. Hendon Hooker, number 11 overall here in Schrager's mock draft, going to the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans opt to not go with Will Levis here at quarterback and go with Hooker instead, staying in the Volunteer State. This would be wild. And some people might say this is a reach because Hendon Hooker is a possibility. He's not even going to go in round 1. I would like this pick from Tennessee. Hendon Hooker's QB3 for me. He's at least for me at least, I feel much better about him than I do Will Levis, who Schrager has mocked to the Houston Texans. And look, Levis has the tools to be good, but he was just a little bit too inconsistent for me this past season at Kentucky. And the Texans here, according to Schrager, again, traded down. They took Tyree Wilson at 4. They get a quarterback, though, at 12, taking Will Levis out of Kentucky. Who is the better quarterback prospect? Both of these guys hailing from the SEC East. Type H for Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee, or type L for Will Levis, the Kentucky product. Let me know down in the comment section. It is the pinned comment on today's video. So an ad break comes, go down, chime in. Tell me who is the better quarterback prospect. Broderick Jones, one of my favorite prospects in this entire class. Unbelievable talent on the offensive line. Had a great career at Georgia. He is mocked here to the New York Jets. It's going to be interesting to see what the Jets do O-line-wise this draft. Devin Witherspoon, this would be one of the biggest steals of the draft, falling to number 14 overall here to the New England Patriots. They brought back John Jones in free agency. Now they're apparently going to bring in Devin Witherspoon, according to Peter Schrager. Number 15 overall, Jackson Smith-Njigba, the wide receiver from Ohio State. Look, even if Aaron Rodgers leaves, you want whoever's going to be your quarterback, and all likely it's going to be Jordan Love, to have good talent around him, to have weapons around him. You want Jordan Love to be in the best possible position to succeed. That's why I like the Packers taking JSN here. Dalton Kincaid, meanwhile, the first tight end off the board out of Utah, selected by the Washington Commanders in Schrager's mock draft. And if you didn't know, we actually launched a NFL draft channel here at Chat Sports, exclusively NFL draft content. The link is below if y'all want to subscribe. YouTube.com/chatNFL. Your one-stop shop for all NFL mock drafts, draft news, draft rumors leading up to next week's NFL draft. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/chatNFL. That link is in the comments and the description of today's video. So go and subscribe to our NFL draft channel. Paris Johnson, number 17 overall to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Kenny Pickett was sacked a lot this past year. The Steelers have got to do something with the offensive line. I think they should draft an offensive lineman, number 17. Joey Porter Jr., really like this guy at Penn State. He is mocked here to the Detroit Lions at number 18 overall. Lions have 2 first-round picks. They use the second on Joey Porter Jr. in Schrager's mock draft. Deonte Banks out of Maryland, another corner off the board here, going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then Lucas Van Ness, the edge rusher out of Iowa. I've seen mocks that have him going inside the top 10. Here he is falling number 20 to Seattle, who they, much like the Lions, also have 2 first-round picks. They use their second one on Van Ness here in this mock draft. Michael Mayer going number 21 overall to the Chargers. The Chargers need a tight end. I thought Dalton Schultz was LA bound. He ends up going to Houston, so maybe they'll address tight end in the draft, taking the Notre Dame product, Mayer. Darnell Wright, really big fan of this guy. Did a great job protecting Hendon Hooker at Tennessee. He goes to Baltimore here, number 22 overall. If that happens, the question would be, what quarterback is he going to be protecting next season? Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of USC, falling to number 23 here, pairing up with Justin Jefferson. That would be a lot of fun, seeing those two in Minnesota's offense. And then Brian Branch, the defensive back out of Alabama, number 24 overall to Jacksonville. Jacksonville adding to that defense over there in Duval. Zay Flowers, the wide receiver from Boston College, going number 25 to the Giants here in Schrager's mock draft. The Giants could use another wide receiver. They've been linked to Hopkins. They've also been linked to Flowers. And it is going to be fascinating to see where Zay Flowers goes. I remember a few weeks ago before the Combine, it was kind of just universally thought that he was going to be an early to mid-second round pick. Now it's looking more and more like he's going to be a first-round selection. Mel Kiper has him as his 10th overall prospect. You have Patrick Mahomes, though, saying that he wants to work out with them. Those two worked out in Texas earlier this week. So could he go 31 to the Chiefs, or could he go, mid to middle of first round? I'm not really sure. I could see a scenario where Zay Flowers goes number 12 overall, or I could see him maybe going late first round to the Chiefs. We'll see what happens. It is going to be fascinating to see where the Boston College wide receiver ends up. Who's going to draft Zay Flowers? Go down in the comments section. Let me know who is going to take Zay Flowers. The Giants certainly would be a good fit for the BC product. Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama, going number 26 overall here to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Gibbs is a guy that I've seen, going middle of the second round in most mocks, so you could certainly make the argument this is a little bit of a reach from Dallas, but they've also been kind of linked to a lot of running backs, number 26. Myles Murphy, meanwhile, the edge rusher out of Clemson, number 27 to the Buffalo Bills. And then Darnell Washington. Talk about a guy that really rose his stock at the NFL Combine in February. The tight end out of Georgia, number 28 overall to the Cincinnati Bengals. That offense, man, would be insane if they could add Darnell Washington in this draft. Speaking of offense, Jonathan Mingo, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss, going to the New Orleans Saints. They already have a lot of wide receivers. They had another one in Jonathan Mingo. And then Will McDonald, the fourth, the edge rusher out of Iowa State, number 30 overall to the Eagles. The Eagles, one of a few teams that have 2 first-round picks this year. And then Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver out of TCU, number 31 overall to the Kansas City Chiefs. Johnston to the Chiefs, man, that would be scary for the league. Some of the top prospects not included in Schrager's mock draft, which only featured the first round. Kalijah Cansey, the defensive tackle out of Pitt. Emmanuel Forbes, the corner out of Mississippi State. Brian Breesy could go first, maybe not. Defensive tackle out of Clemson. Jalen Hyatt, really like him. Drew Sanders, Osiris Torrance, Anton Harrison, Keely Ringo, BJ Ojulari, and then Mozzie Smith out of Michigan. Who is the better quarterback prospect? Let me know down in the comments section. Who do you think, Sam? I would say Hooker. I really would.
I would say Hendon Hooker's a better quarterback. I would say Will Levis has a higher ceiling.
Okay. I don't hate that take.
Will Levis has a higher ceiling, and that's the reason why. I want to be clear, the sole reason why he's a round 1 quarterback, because of the flashes, the physical attributes, which are, imagine a genetically engineered quarterback in a lab or something. It's Will Levis.
What do you think? Because he does have the Josh Allen comps.
Big, tall, strong arm, runs, can lower the shoulder. Josh Allen, I think his comp is like year 2 Josh Allen. Right before that real breakout where you're like, oh, Josh Allen's really damn good at football, right? Like I don't think personally Will Levis will ever get to that point. I can see the kind of physical comparisons. I just don't. He scares me. He scares me because he didn't elevate his team this year. Granted, it was
I was high on Will Levis coming in this year. And then this year, Kentucky had all these expectations, and they didn't win as many games as I thought, and Will Levis didn't win them enough games.
So here,
he just didn't take games over. Like Hendon Hooker took games over this year.
How about this for a comp for Will Levis? What about like a Jay Cutler?
I don't hate it. I think that's a ceiling.
I think that's probably fair.
I think
maybe slightly more athletic, but he's also not Anthony Richardson athletic. I think that's about the comp I would give him. Upside, he's what people say, and he's like a Matthew Stafford type of guy. I just don't think he'll be that guy.
We mentioned, Sam, there's been a lot of buzz about Trey Lance to Houston. There's an equal amount of buzz about Will Levis being number 2 overall pick.
Which is crazy.
Will Levis actually surpassed in betting odds
I know.
C.J. Stroud to be number 2 pick.
I've seen those odds, and I love to gamble. I am not putting money on Will Levis to go number 2 overall.
I am certainly not either.
And if it happens, I am laughing in the face of whoever picks him there.
I would tend to agree. Be sure to subscribe, guys. Got the NFL Draft coming up next week. Sam and I are going to be on our main channel bringing you guys NFL Draft coverage. Really looking forward to that. YouTube.com/chatsportstv. Be sure to join us. We about to go to Loop, Sam? Not going to Loop? Okay. So be sure to hit that subscribe button below. Thanks so much for joining us on today's show. Shout out to Chad Jones tuning in. Shout out to some of our super chatters, Ozzy Osmond, Corbin Britton, Jay Elam, Chad Jones as well.
Who?
Chad Jones! We appreciate Sam Brown making it happen behind the scenes as always. Sam, a lot of fun, man. Looking forward to seeing you guys next week on our live show and also during the draft.
It's almost draft week, baby.